Hey everyone, and welcome back. Today we're tackling an issue that's causing quite a stir in Indian higher education and is absolutely crucial for any UPSC aspirant out there.
Definitely a hot topic.
It sure is. We're diving into the Draft University Grants Commission, or UGC Regulations of 2025.
Ah, yes, the 2025 draft regulations.
Specifically, the controversy surrounding how vice-chancellors are appointed.
The heads of universities.
Exactly. This topic, my friends, has major implications for your polity governance education and current affairs prep.
It really does touch on so many areas.
Talk about hitting multiple targets with one stone, right?
Absolutely hitting multiple targets.
Now, as always, our deep dive is based on a super insightful article from The Hindu.
Yes, a great piece.
It's titled UGC Regulations 2025, Vice-Chancellor Appointments and State Government Concerns.
Definitely worth a read for anyone following this issue.
So let's get to the heart of it. What's got everyone so fired up about these draft UGC regulations?
Well, the biggest change, and the one that's causing the most friction, is the proposed composition of the selection committee for VC appointments.
The selection committee, right?
Yes, the draft regulations suggest removing direct representation from the state government.
Okay, so no more state government officials on the selection panel. That's a pretty big shift.
It is a significant departure from the past, where state governments often had considerable influence on who helmed these universities.
I can see why that would ruffle some feathers. So why is this change being proposed in the first place?
Well, it's important to understand that this isn't happening in isolation. The judiciary, especially the Supreme Court, has been advocating for greater autonomy for universities and trying to minimize political interference in VC appointments for years now.
So the Supreme Court is essentially saying, leave the academics to the academics, right?
That's a good way to put it. They've been pretty consistent in their stance that university appointments should be based purely on merit free from any political influence.
Okay, makes sense. What kind of legal backing do they have for this stance?
There's a whole string of judgments that have set the stage for this. The Gempirdan K. Godvi case from 2019 really stands out.
Gempirdan K. Godvi, okay.
Yes. In this case, the Supreme Court explicitly said that university appointments should be based purely on merit free from any political influence. And this stance has been reiterated in subsequent cases like the Sonali Chakravarti Banerjee case in 2022. And the professor, Dr. Srijit P.S. and Dr. Premachandran Keeshoth cases both decided just this year.
So the judiciary is building a pretty solid legal foundation for keeping GC selections merit-based.
They certainly are.
But as you mentioned earlier, this new approach isn't sitting well with everyone, especially state governments.
And for understandable reasons.
What kind of concerns are they raising?
Well, first off, funding state governments contribute significantly to university budgets, covering infrastructure development, faculty salaries, a host of other expenses.
Right, they're footing a good chunk of the bill.
Exactly. And they're saying, hey, we're investing heavily in these institutions. Shouldn't we have some say in how they're run?
That makes sense.
Yeah.
It's not just about wielding power, it's about having a voice when you're a major stakeholder.
Yeah.
Are there other concerns beyond just the financial aspect?
Absolutely. State governments also emphasize the need for universities to be responsive to regional needs. They want to ensure that universities are contributing to local development goals and addressing the specific challenges and opportunities within their states.
That's a good point. Universities shouldn't exist in isolation. They need to be connected to the communities they serve.
Exactly.
So how do we reconcile these seemingly conflicting positions? How can we ensure both academic integrity and regional relevance?
Yeah.
That's where things get really interesting, right?
It is interesting. The article suggests a couple of mechanisms that could help bridge this gap between the judiciary's push for autonomy and the state government's desire for a voice in the process. Yeah, it really does get interesting.
That's what I love about these deep dives.
Mm.
We take these complex issues and try to make them understandable, exciting.
Yeah, definitely exciting.
So what are these mechanisms that the article talks about? What kind of solutions are they proposing?
Well, one idea is to allow the university's executive body, like the Senate or Board of Governors, to nominate a member for the VC selection committee. But here's the key. This nominee wouldn't just be any random person,
They can't just pick anyone.
Exactly. They'd need to be a highly respected academic, maybe even a former vice-chancellor themselves.
How interesting.
And ideally, someone who has at least the informal approval of the state executive.
I see. So it's a way to ensure the state government's perspective is considered
Right.
without giving them direct control over the appointment.
Exactly. It's like a compromise.
Yeah.
Finding that middle ground.
Maintaining the academic independence, but still acknowledging the state government's stake in the whole thing.
Precisely.
Clever.
And another idea that's floated in the article is to actually have a state government nominee on the selection committee.
Okay, so they do get a seat at the table.
They do, but with very specific conditions. This nominee would have to be someone with impeccable academic credentials,
Right, someone who really knows their stuff.
Exactly. And maybe a former VC.
A former VC, okay.
And they would need to meet the same standards of independence as members of, say, the UPSC.
Got it. So no political appointees pushing agendas.
No.
The focus remains on finding the best person for the job.
Exactly. Based on merit and expertise.
Now, this is a crucial point, especially for us UPSC aspirants.
It is a key point.
This speaks to the larger theme of good governance transparency, making sure that institutions are led by qualified individuals.
It absolutely does. And, this whole debate highlights the evolving relationship between the judiciary, the state, and educational institutions in India.
It's fascinating to see how all these pieces fit together.
It is, and these are concepts you'll definitely need to grapple with for both the mains and prelims exams.
Oh, yeah. A lot to unpack here.
Yeah.
But before we move on, I want to circle back to something you mentioned earlier about broadening the qualifications for vice-chancellors under the Draft UGC Regulations.
Oh, right, yeah.
It feels like that point kind of got overshadowed by this whole appointment process debate.
It did a bit, but it's still a significant change worth exploring.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What exactly does it entail?
Well, the draft regulations suggest that the search committee should consider individuals with substantial experience in various sectors.
Okay, so not just academia.
Not just academia, they're talking about industry research, even civil services.
Wow, so it's not just about having a long list of publications anymore.
It's a move away from that traditional emphasis on purely academic credentials.
Interesting. What's the reasoning behind that?
Well, the thinking is that someone with a strong track record in managing large organizations, whether in the private sector or the government, could bring valuable skills to university leadership.
I can see the logic there, but I imagine this approach has its critics too.
Of course, there are valid concerns. Some people argue that deep academic experience is still essential,
Right, to really understand the university environment.
Exactly. They worry that bringing in outsiders without that background could lead to a disconnect.
A disconnect, okay.
With universities losing sight of their core academic mission.
So it's a balancing act, isn't it?
Yeah.
You want to diversify the pool of potential leaders, but you also don't want to compromise the academic integrity of these institutions.
It is a delicate balance.
That's why having a robust and transparent selection process is so important.
Couldn't agree more.
The composition of the selection committee, the criteria they use to evaluate candidates, the level of scrutiny applied to the whole process.
All these factors will play a role.
It'll be interesting to see how this all plays out.
Absolutely. It's a story worth watching, for sure.
Yeah, it seems like we keep coming back to this idea of balance, right?
Yeah.
It's a recurring theme for sure. Balancing autonomy with accountability. Tradition with innovation, regional needs with national aspirations. It's a lot for these selection committees to juggle.
It is. It highlights how these draft UGC regulations, if implemented, could have a ripple effect throughout the entire higher education landscape in India.
Okay, so let's zoom out a bit and talk big picture. What kind of impact could these changes have on Indian universities in the long run?
Well, one potential outcome is a shift in the power dynamics within universities themselves. With reduced state government influence, we could see a greater emphasis on academic freedom and institutional autonomy.
Interesting.
This could empower universities to be more agile, to pursue research aligned with national or even global priorities and potentially compete more effectively on the international stage.
That's an exciting prospect. Imagine Indian universities becoming global hubs of innovation and scholarship, attracting top talent from around the world.
It's certainly a possibility.
But wouldn't that also come with its own set of challenges?
Absolutely. Increased autonomy also means increased responsibility. Universities would need to demonstrate greater accountability not just to funding agencies, but also to society as a whole.
Right, they can't just operate in a vacuum.
Exactly. They would need to ensure that their research and teaching activities are relevant, impactful, and aligned with the needs of the nation.
And that's where the role of vice-chancellor becomes even more crucial.
Oh, absolutely.
They'll need to be not just academic visionaries, but also skilled administrators and effective communicators capable of building partnerships and navigating those complex relationships with various stakeholders.
It's a demanding role for sure.
It is a tall order, but it also represents an incredible opportunity. These Draft UGC Regulations 2025, if implemented thoughtfully and with careful consideration of all the potential implications, could be a real catalyst for positive change in Indian higher education.
I agree. It has the potential to usher in a more vibrant, dynamic, and globally competitive university system in India.
So for our UPSC aspirants listening in, this entire discussion is a goldmine.
Oh, yeah, definitely a gold mine.
It touches upon so many critical themes: Indian polity, governance, education policy, current affairs, and it's a perfect illustration of how seemingly technical issues can have profound and far-reaching societal implications.
As you delve deeper into this topic, remember to analyze the arguments on both sides, consider the potential benefits and risks of different approaches, and think critically about the kind of higher education system we want for India. What role should universities play in shaping the future of our nation? These are the kinds of thought-provoking questions that will not only deepen your understanding, but also elevate your UPSC preparation.
And remember, we're here to help you navigate these complex issues. If you have any questions, thoughts, or insights, drop them in the comments below. We love hearing from you. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more deep dives into issues that matter for your UPSC journey.
Before we sign off, one final thought for you to ponder. This entire discussion has revolved around vice-chancellors and selection committees. But what about the students? How can we ensure that their voices are heard and their needs are met as we reshape the landscape of Indian higher education? That's something I hope you'll all continue to think about.
Great point to end on, and that wraps up our deep dive into the Draft UGC Regulations 2025. Thanks for joining us, and until next time, keep learning, keep questioning, and keep striving for excellence. And for more in-depth analysis, be sure to check out the original article in the Hindu, which we've linked in the show notes.